All right, so I said I would do a tier list after doing my top 15 list, and here we go. So like usual, I make my tier list and I get some input from other people because I never think just one opinion is good enough. I like to have it double checked, triple checked, quad checked by other people, and I definitely think I came up with a very solid tier list. Okay, a lot of my influence is in it, and I would also like to say, if you believe a unit is one tier higher, one tier lower, to me, it really doesn't mean jack shit. I don't care, right? If you think so, then good for you. Good for you, all the power to you. I don't think it's really that important. Unless obviously it's like 2-3 tier differences and I'm like severely underrating a unit. I don't think it matters too much. If you want the explanation as to why I think X unit is in Y tier, well then watch the video and you will definitely find out. Now this is my criteria. Everyone's at 0 dupes with their best setups, which means SSR Yaga is considered always to be on yellow as he buffs yellow more. He basically buffs it for double, right? So of course he's going to be considered on yellow. Because look, he just does this off yellow, but then on yellow he also gives this, right? So it's very important to consider that. Now next up, multiple setups possible is considered an advantage. If you got a lot of team setups, that's great. For example, Mahito to Hanami. Hanami is meant mainly as a supporter for stall teams, but Mahito can be ran in many more options as a sub DPS for every color, where Hanami can be ran off of stall teams, but I don't think we'd say it's as effective as Mahito, in my personal opinion. Now, DPS as being universal does increase their rating. It's a tower-only ranking and not ranked in order, as you can see on the bottom. For the people who are watching that are not reading this part, well, I mean, they're going to see this at the end of the video. All right. So let's do this. We have a lot of units, but I've already had a lot of my ideas kind of set out for me, so we're good to go. We are very, very good to go. I definitely think the line between S plus and S is very... It's blurred. It is definitely blurred. A lot of the S units could go into S plus, and you could argue for some of the S plus units being a bit worse, right? But definitely, I would say there's like just small things that really make the S plus units just shine that much more, at least for the supports, right? The DPS, it's pretty clear cut who's S plus, who's S, but it's really the supports that have a different tiering, right? So let's get into it. I mean, the easiest part of this tier list is these two units in SS, okay? They are definitely running the game right now, because if you have these two, and no matter which two other supports just there, Sukuna could pretty much beat every single floor if you want, right? It's kind of crazy when you think about it, just how easy it is that this game has become with these two. Gojo giving the stun for up to 4 turns essentially, or being able to make them do nothing for 4 turns, guaranteed stun for 2 turns, 300% damage increase, lowering ult gauge while still doing damage and lowering the enemy's damage. It's like, there's nothing he's not doing, right? He is just the perfect, like, sub DPS with like, while being a god support, right? So it's just crazy. Then Sukuna has the highest damage numbers because of how he works, where his ult is AoE, puts 800% bleed type neutral, while also having a skill 3 that he uses 2 turns after his ult. That is still ult damage numbers. It's just unbeatable. It really is. I'm going to put this over here. It really is just unbeatable. So that's my thoughts for those two. Now we get into the S+. I really don't think we need to take much time for SS, right? Really as simple as that. But we could grab just a couple people that I know will be there, okay? And kind of go for the rest. I'm just trying to grab everyone I see who I kind of think is going to be there. So I'm going to do it starting with the DPSs because it's going to be important later. You'll see at the end. I'm going to categorize it. So we're going to start with Mahito. And why is Mahito an S+? Well, it's basically because you could do type neutral damage to everyone in the game with this ultimate being 15%. It's like actual just like brokenness, because what this also does, it's very easy to break the enemy's guard with this, right? You'll see him being ran as a sub DPS many times, and that's the only way I've really used Mahito so far, and it's worked very well because early on either you break, and it's basically a lot easier for a lot of people to do this because well, let's say for example floor 50, some people might find it easier with Mahito than just Tinjo because Mahito lets him break early on, then Tinjo goes crazy, right? So it's very good for that, but also it's hard to kill him because he dodges all attacks that are single target. So it's like he's a very good unit. We already know this. There's not more that I need to say. Next up, Toji. Now remember, not ranked in order and tiers. Please keep that in mind. We're gonna go with Toji next. So Toji is very good because he has damage reduction, has the chance to dodge, removes buffs, and has very high AoE damage with up to a 75% taijutsu increase, I believe. So having all of this in mind, his ult becomes absolutely broken when it's 1600, but then it's like another 50, and then it's like another 25, right? So, you know, this guy's very good, especially considering he could dodge. He's pretty tanky for a DPS, I'd say. Not as much as Sukuna, right? Not as much as Gojo's, obviously. But it's, like, good enough. It's definitely better than Yuta, which, speaking of Yuta, is the next DPS, right? Amazing heals, very good damage, has a skill 2 AoE, could come in clutch sometimes. Skill 3 has very high damage multipliers. Like, that skill 3, bro, it's so good. It's just like the damage it produces when you think of it. Like what? That's like 300. That's like 700. Like just quickly. Like that's almost 700 or yeah, around there. It's very high numbers. For sure. But his ult is just super strong. The only drawback is really that he can't use it for another 4 turns afterwards. And in some cases, you might not completely one tap. But he did get buffed, and it's definitely good, right? So that's something I want to make sure is known. Now, this is for JP, if people don't know. I don't really preface it, but it's like when you see Sukuna, Domain Gojo, when I say first anniversary, I feel like people should be aware, but maybe some people aren't. Now, Hollow Purple, why he's so good is because he just nukes and leaves. That's it. He doesn't take damage, nukes and leaves. He says bye-bye, and then he just dips, right? Which is super broken. His ult is just so strong, 2000% multiplier, and then it's like, oh yeah, before he leaves, he also decreases all enemies' ult gauge by 2, which why that's so good is because ults could like lose you the game sometimes, especially the ults that it's like, oh my god, 100% damage increase, oh you get stunned, right? Those types of ults, it's just so good to have Hollow Purple there to be able to easily wipe, right? And then also get rid of that ult gauge. It's one of the better things about Gojos in this game. For example, Domain Gojo and also this Gojo have it. Now next up, Zonji's for sure here. I mean, listen, I had him on a different tier than Tinjo, or well, like not another tier, but they were pretty ranked far, right? Like 9 difference, I think, or 8. But I think it's fair. I mean, Zonji's very good, right? He's still very good. I must say, very, very good. His damage is absolutely incredible. His ult damage is pretty decent, while also afterwards just becoming an absolute god with this skill, right? 500%, but then it's like you have this, which makes the next turn even stronger, and you could use this twice, right, alongside this. So it's like, wow, especially with this second damage dealt, his second turn is gonna have an extra 60% total. So it's like, that's just absolutely insane when you could spam this twice anyway. So it's like that last hit on the like 4th turn, if you're just doing this one, is going to be absolutely broken, right? Because that would be like 60 plus another 60. Like that damage on that second turn with the skill 2 is just disgusting, right? So very, very good unit. Now Tinjo just has it all though, right? Very fucking good unit, okay. Tinjo AoEs, right, has a taunt on the same skill that gives him extra ult gauge. Has a very easy buff, doesn't leave the battle, and has attack immunity for about half the battle. And he has pretty high HP. Like, it's so crazy, right? Half the time he can be hit. He usually won't die in those times. And then usually you're using it with Kaido, especially nowadays. And Kaido just, like, fucking makes it so that you just won't take damage, right? It's just insane. Like, Kaido is a really good unit. It's just unfortunate that it's our 3rd Kaido and you can't use different Kaidos together. Because, like, look. You decrease the enemy's damage dealt, and then it decreases all allies' damage received at the same time. And you could stack this twice, essentially. So alongside a stun, like this attack for Tinjo on the turns that he's weak is very fucking strong, right? So that's what we have to definitely consider when we're talking about this, right? Please keep that in mind. Now, next up, Degumi as a support. Am I forgetting anyone? No. So Degumi as a support. Those are 6 DPS S+ units, okay? So Degumi as a support for the 3rd time now is just so good. His debuffs are very strong. Some turns or some battles you'll need debuffers, some turns, I should say battles, you need supports, and in any of those cases, right, Degumi is just going to be very good because he just has built-in debuffs in his domain that really put him above the rest for this, right? Very strong, but giving himself attack immunity, making him like invulnerable for 4 turns, while being able to just decrease the enemy's damage received by up to like 3, or increase the amount that they receive by 300%. It's literally Domain Gojo's ult, but like more drawn out. Obviously, it's like Domain Gojo's kind of more valuable in that case, but Degumi is still very good. In total, Degumi does technically give more of a damage increase because he also has this, right? So in total, it's about 345, where Gojo, it's max 300, but, you know, I digress. Definitely different instances. But still very fucking solid support. Actually, there was a DPS, Blue Gojo, right? So Blue Gojo, I want to preface, is very, very, very low on the S+ list. He is like on fraud alert, right? When I first made this list, he was in the between. Like, he was basically just between S+ and S. I just said I'm unsure, so the fraud goes here. Because I just don't really like how he plays anymore. It's just there's not much space for him. But let's say you don't have Sukuna. He's still a viable option, which is the main thing, right? I'm not exactly comparing, like, oh, with the optimal team, how does, like, X unit face this? Just, if you're able to use him, which would be basically Geto and Gojo as your optimal team, he's still runnable, right? I just don't think he's really, like, when you're ranking him, he goes way lower, because I feel like the ranking placement and the tier list placement is definitely a bit different. But overall, if you still want to use him, he's definitely not bad, okay? I do have different kind of criteria. Like, I show the criteria here. I have different criteria for an actual tier list and a ranking, okay? Because when you're ranking it, you're comparing one unit to another, but this is really just a general, like, list, right? So that's kind of how I see it. But let me know if you also agree with me. Like, I feel like he's in between these two. He's not amazing, but he's not bad, but he's like on the low end, right? He is really on the low end of S+. Now, next up, we got Kaido. This guy's just too good, okay? Rare Kaido is an absolute beast, all right? So why? It's because he gives so much CE. Like, one skill, he's giving back 38 per 2 turns. And it's like, it just goes on and on and on if you really wanted to. And then his ult, 120% Jujutsu. If you see here, Jujutsu, 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 Jujutsu. So it's like all these units can use Kaido, his skill 3 and his ult, but obviously Gojo's can't, but different case, right? He's still going to help the supports keep their abilities up, which is why Kaido is amazing. Now, Maki also gets his placement in S+, because he stuns, has damage reduction to an insane level, so he works on stall teams, but he also works off of stall teams, which is one of the things people don't realize about Hanami. It's that, like, you're mainly using Hanami more so on stall teams. While it's possible to use off, I'm not denying that. I feel like you're seeing a lot more of Inumaki, because Inumaki is also very good for Domain Gojo to increase the ult gauge while giving damage reduction of 43%. Are you insane? Like, that's in a very good amount. You could just have 80% damage reduction up because of Inumaki, which is amazing. And if you're really feeling confident, you could stun, right? So it's just such a good unit to have, so simple yet so good. I love seeing rare units up in the top tier. Now, Yaga is amazing. My God. Him giving darkness is so good, but then he just shits out so much support. So he has this on top of the fact he's just giving like 4 debuffs in one go. Like, bro, it's fucking insane, right? So it's like 46% for 3 turns. Sure, it's only 3 turns, but then his ultimate is 4 turns and it has a higher amount while also giving damage increase, while having this being up every single turn. So like, this Yaga at max is doing way better than Red Yaga, while also giving confusion, which might actually, or sorry, not confusion, darkness. Yeah, where is it? Is it skill 3? Yeah. So darkness basically makes it so that the enemy might not use their turn. So like on the tip top, like I said, it's in best case scenarios, right? Best setups. So Yaga on yellow is absolutely crushing it. I genuinely cannot wait to use this Yaga. But still, this Yaga is absolutely amazing, right? Just the amount of teams he's run on, right? He just has it all, right? Even not, okay, his skill 2 is very good, but it's not even just that. It's the fact that, like, his ult is good if you don't have enough CE. Still, up to a 180% damage increase, amazing. But then his ult is just like, yeah, we could give you a bit more while also decreasing the enemy's damage. So this Yaga is really busted for that easily. Like being able to decrease their damage while still having a really easy rotation, because it's like you'll be able to spam this like 3 times basically. Unless I'm tripping, I think you could use it 3 times in a row without any other CE involved, which is really, really good, definitely. But like I said in other videos, this Momo is one of my favorite units because her ult gauge lower is just one of the best to use, because there's no like kind of build up. It's just like you use ult. You don't have to like domain Gojo kind of like wait till you have ult, right? Because domain Gojo is 1500 ult gauge. So it's like this is a lot easier to use, but it's also a stun, AoE stun, which also works very well. I just really like this unit because she's so simple to use. Like if you have her dupe 2 especially, but obviously this is a dupe 0 show like tier list, but if you have her dupe 2, she could just like pump this out when you need it, and it's so great. But then even at that, her skill 1 still gives a debuff, which is very nice. That at least there's that in instances where you need it, so it's great. Now, Blue Ghetto, Green Ghetto, I don't think we need to talk about them much because they're just really good DPS supports, okay? They have their own mixed role where it's like they'll both do very good damage. Green Ghetto, single target, Blue Ghetto, AoE damage, and they both work for their respective colors. Blue Ghetto works amazing with Sukuna. Green Ghetto works amazing on Mono Green, especially with Green Nobara. And it's like, wow, they are just fucking stellar, okay? I don't need to talk about them much because I glaze the Ghetto units way too heavily, but that's basically it for the S plus tier. Now, Nanami is the first S unit because he just works so well, and I'll kind of explain why exactly, because a lot of people might be confused, and it's basically this. So he's able to give himself 240% crit rate and break damage, and especially if you combo with someone like Momo, the break damage is basically just insane. But it's also just because like now his ult is massively buffed, right? It's an extra 150 on each, so an extra 300% total, but this is a 1280 ult, right? AoE, but when you crit, it increases crit damage, right? And when you also consider that in most instances, he's going to be black flashing, because when he black flashes, he gets 200% black flash rate for 4 turns, which means on your ult, you're going to have higher break damage, higher crit rate, and higher black flash. And as you are getting increased crit damage, when you do a crit, it's a 1200 ult, but then it's like 1.5 times 1.5 because you have a black flash and crit on most hits, which just absolutely skyrockets his damage, alongside the fact that his ult gauge was lowered by 400. So you want people on global, you don't understand, but his ult is a good amount easier to get, especially with the recollection bits on JP. But then they also added in another passive where he just gets extra taijutsu jujutsu if you do perform a black flash or crit hit, which is just so broken, alongside the fact that overtime is actually usable with the current meta, where it's like you'll have someone who lowers damage, or you'll have domain Gojo who stuns, and if domain Gojo stuns, well, for 4 turns they're not really doing much, which means you're gonna get this more often. So it's like Nanami is just so good, it's actually insane. Now besides that, Green Yuji is also very good. Like they did a very good buff with him. Green Nanami is probably a bit better, but Green Yuji could get his ult way quicker, as he does give himself his own ult gauge, so we have to keep that in mind. But I went on Nanami again, but Green Yuji, like he gives himself 240 ult gauge, but that's literally a fifth of his ult already. But every like skill 2 is basically a fourth of his ult if you count the fact that he gives it just by the skill. And his crits and black flashes are pretty nice, because what they did to it is that now he gets increased crit damage while already having it like a 300% increased damage. It's also now increased crit damage on the first to third hits, and the first hit is still a black flash with increased black flash damage. And one thing to mention with that, with the guaranteed black flash, is you do have the increased 100% black flash rate, so Yuji does become very strong. I think they also added, they added the taijutsu here when you perform a black flash, which means once he gets going, like it's really fun. It is. Also, they made his skill 3 a bit easier to use, which I like. And it seems like they increased the crit res a bit. Yeah, they did. So it's like all very good. So this Yuji's buffs actually did put him pretty high. Now we're going to start going a bit quicker, but this Yuji is also in a very similar position where he's able to do a lot of good ults, and it's also very, very strong. I don't really need to take much time for him. Now, this Megumi, Green Megumi, is also a very good unit. And the reason is he has like his dogs, bro. His dogs are also very good for like follow-up damage, and his debuffs are also pretty decent unless I'm mistaken. But let me see if I'm really forgetting anything. But yeah, no, stuff like this when your dogs are active, increasing the enemy's jujutsu damage received while him being a DPS on his own right is really good. And also this is nice, and then his ult is just pretty good considering what it does, right? So you have 500, but then you could get another 300%, which is cool. But if you already have it, you're also able to do another 700 and then increase the damage received. So it's just like his damage could get really high, his debuffs could get really high, and I like this Megumi quite a lot. For green, he's going to work very well, especially with Kaido. All those debuffs start to really stack. The green team could be pretty nasty. Now, Red Nobara, having the AoE nail thing that she could do while having her skill 3 just kind of be AoE is very nice with her ult. Her damage feels pretty good. I mean, I've seen a lot of stuff about her. I haven't necessarily used her myself. Not yet anyway, because I have her on the JP, but I just haven't really done much. But overall though, like, her ult does feel very nice, being pretty high while performing a Black Flash is fucking huge, all things considered. So you really cannot hate on my girl. I didn't even realize they buffed her, but yeah, no, what did they buff? They buffed this, which this is actually the best thing to buff if we're being real. Because her damage here could get pretty high, I feel, which is why it's obviously worth 50 CE, but it's kind of made up for it by the fact that it's 5 for the AoE, which means you could just stack, and then at the end, her AoE damage on her skill 3 becomes pretty fucking high, and it's good that it's Jujutsu, all things considered, with the Jujutsu buffers. And then Yellow Nobara is still here, because she could still do very good single target damage. I don't really want to take too much time on her, but her damage is very good. She has her own buff, which is, I think, the only Nobara with a buff. And then this Nobara, Green Nobara, is also a very good unit. Where the fuck is she, bro? She should be later on, yeah. Because she works with debuffs, and Green has a lot of good debuffers with Green Megumi, Green Ghetto, and it's just a very nice situation to be in. Okay, 1000%. The more debuffs, the more damage she does, and she already has pretty high damage multipliers. I cannot wait to get this girl up, because she is just looking so fun, and I do have her on my account, and it's like, bro, being able to get up to a 260% damage increase, right? So crazy when her ult is already 1300, right? I really do like her, really do. And when you perform a Black Flash, just giving yourself 45 extra Jujutsu for someone like this is definitely very good. She could do a lot of fun stuff, and having those debuffs really just allows her to go well with green. Like, they knew what they were cooking with their green team for pay to wins, at least. Now, Maki is just kind of a nuker. Like, she's able to do a lot of good stuff, have a big damage increase. I'm not going to go through every unit in depth, but it's very nice, right? Now, Yellow Nanami is also very good, where he's able to do type advantage damage, but it's kind of beat out, right? So let's say by other Nanamis in other colors, I'd say both of them are better in most cases, but this Nanami is also looking pretty good in general. Like, if you run like a crit rate, I just saw this before, but if you run like a crit rate recollection bit on him, it's also going to help his Black Flash rate. And this is also good, where his type advantage damage is increased even further, so his damage is not exactly as it seems, but it's only single target, right? Which is a bit unfortunate, but still, this guy is definitely very good, could get his ult very quick, all things considered, and I just like him. The way he works with his type advantage is pretty nice. Now, next up, we got Blue Nanami, who's also a very interesting unit. So we're gonna go to Blue Nanami right now. I'm probably gonna keep, yeah, I'm just gonna keep this and just go around it. So Blue Nanami, why he works is because he has Black Flash and just a bunch of buff interesting things, where he could like stack this twice, right? Increase the amount in total here by 20% over 2 turns, and then here he gets an 80% damage increase. And when his ult has a 1000% multiplier while having a great chance to crit, the great chance to crit alongside the extra Black Flash rate that you should be able to build up is going to allow him to really make this just absolutely astronomically strong. And then this is also a pretty nice stack to have, as it's 6 turns. Early on, you just have to hope for the best, and then later on, it's going to be really good. And this is nice. It's just the unfortunate thing, his ult is going to be probably, actually, it's even better than Green Nanami with this 220 right away. Yeah, no, his ult is actually going to be very easy to kind of build up. So this guy is doing pretty good stuff. Unfortunately, again, it is a single target, but it is what it is, because, bro, like, him having a high chance to crit is going to be very nice alongside Black Flashes. Like, this damage is going to be expanded quite tremendously. So I do like him a good bit. Now, Kaido is just like, I don't know a better rare Kaido, because rare Kaido gives a lot of CE, but this Kaido is very good for yellow specifically. Rare Kaido is way better for other colors, but for yellow, this SSR Kaido is so good, giving a bunch of damage increases and the damage reduction with the stun. This Kaido is just a tremendously good unit. I really like this Kaido. Okay, it's insane. Now, next up is Hanami. She's on the higher end of S. Her damage lowers are really good. the only problem you could like maybe say is like, oh, high CE, but then it's like, oh yeah, she gives herself good CE also. So, oh, why did I close it? The fuck am I doing? So yeah, she gives herself, what is it? She could give herself 20 CE twice, which sucks because before, actually no, this is at the start of each wave. Oh wow, so it's actually better now. That's crazy. And then her damage reduction is really good alongside the 13% heal, right? Especially when her ult is lowering damage by 33, which is pretty good. But then it's also just being able to lower damage further here, right? So it's really nice to be able to have these two things together, right? So 33 plus another 33 is so good, especially because in some rare cases you might be able to stack this twice with Kaido, maybe. Not that I would really recommend it, but it is possible in some cases. But in general, just 66% damage lower is just super strong while still having a decent amount of damage that she could do. I like it. I do like it. She's going to be hard to kill because herself, right? 20% damage reduction, 53% damage reduction, 86% damage reduction if it's additive, which I think it is. So it's just crazy. It really is. It really is. Now, Nanami is a bit lower than Red Yaga. Reason is, where is he? Reason is because he gives actually less damage and his ult doesn't actually give much, right? So where Red Yaga also gives damage lower on his ult, Red Nanami does not, right? Red Nanami does not. So like those are the two units usually people compare the two like against each other, but it's like his ult gives 27% when Yaga's gives 50, and Yaga's also lowers damage. Right, and this is for all allies, sure, but if you put it on one enemy and it's the boss, it still equals to the same thing. So it's like, yeah, no, he's just not as good. Less damage amount also doesn't lower damage of the enemy, so it's like, yeah, it's just not the same thing. Now, Momo is still pretty good support. Like, she gives some nice amount of damage with the dodge, is pretty good, all things considered. Definitely can't really go wrong with this. If I could click on it, you can't really go wrong on it. Does she have the dodge? Yeah, she does. Having that stun with it too is pretty nice, but it's really this, right? It's only one time, but still the amount of damage it gives is actually higher than Blue Momo. So there's some cases where you might think that, oh, this is actually a better unit to run, right? And I would be like, sure, if you want to have a full nuking, like an actual nuke, this basically equates to the same thing as long as you use buffs, right? So that's the thing. If you don't use buffs, then it doesn't really count. And then Blue Momo is just better, right? But still, Green Momo is a good unit. Definitely. Definitely. So next up, we're just going to kind of speed through these. Kaido, decent, has attack immunity, good damage increase, but it's like he's not as crazy as the other two Kaidos in my opinion. This Kaido is definitely on the higher end, and this Kaido just giving what he gives is amazing. It's just he's kind of held back by only being on mono. He's great on mono, but it's also like it's not as needed because Yaga still gives darkness, and then Gojo doesn't take damage, right? So it's like yellow's in a way too good a spot for this guy to be too high, but then this Kaido, it's just the attack immunity isn't that needed when a lot of Gojos already have it. A lot of the top units won't really die besides maybe Utah. So it's like, bro, he's just like, he's good, but it's very certain strats that I don't think puts him above anyone else. Now, his debuffs are great, but it's basically either you do more damage or you take less. So either he's giving a bunch of debuffs that are good, or he's putting the enemy in stun and confusion state, which is very good still, but having one or the other kind of sucks, so I kind of rate him a bit lower. Now, this Inumaki is very good. I was almost considering S+. He's a bit on the higher end of these supports. I really like this Inumaki, and I cannot wait for him because he's AoE, increasing our damage essentially, but it's more so for blues, which is a bit of a problem. Like, sure, I'll count them at their max potential, but it's like at the same time, it would be nice for them to be good off of like the main team, right? And for example, like this Yaga is usable still off of yellow, where this Kaido and this Inumaki not so much, but he's still very good. Like the damage he's giving, well, the damage he's dealing also, and then also the fact that he's giving 40% on his ult, and then his other skills are giving 27. It's pretty good, but it's not maybe as crazy as you'd like it to be. But his damage is actually really nice to where it's like, yeah, he's fine being an S for sure. Like he's a support that's still able to do damage, which is definitely an interesting thing. Now, Shoko is just able to heal, so obviously she's there. Not many healers in the game, and it's on command, where Yuta it's after attacks, which in some cases could be bad, but where Shoko it's like before the attack, so it might actually save you. And then Mai's good. It just feels like in some cases she's very easy to kill on the team she wants to be on, and her follow-ups just maybe aren't exactly in meta, but she can do a lot of good stuff. I've used her a bit, but she's not exactly like the best unit I find, but the debuffs she can apply are still very good. Like the extra attacks that she does are nice. Being able to apply this is nice, but it's usually like lesser turns, right? Like, okay, single target 80% damage increase is nice, but it's only for 2 turns, for example, where it's like the Wayne Gojo, it's 4 turns, Degumi, it's 3 turns, but then it stacks up to 300%, right? So it's like a lot of 2-turn buffs that are like, it's good, not as good as other units, but it's still pretty decent. Now for niche options, right? These are either the stall teams, right? Or taunt teams, where basically, for example, Red Toto buffs the person behind them, gives them puts it where if anyone attacks them, they're in the confused state, which in the confused state, sometimes the enemy will not actually do their attack. And let's say the person that is behind them taunts all the attacks to them and has damage reduction. Well, then those 2 units are kind of taking care of the damage part for very difficult stages where I've been told it's worked on 55 and 60. And then the other 2 units, maybe you use Domain, Gojo, and Sukuna, could do the rest. Okay, so that's essentially how it works. So we're going to blast through these. Junpei, skill 1 is all he needs to use. He could stack Jujutsu damage lower 3 times, which is absolutely diabolical, right? This is basically his main use, his only good use, where he's able to decrease the enemy's Jujutsu damage for 3 turns. Is it 3 turns? It doesn't say. 3 turns, I guess. For 32.3%, right? So they basically do no damage at all times if you just spam the skill 1. Very good. Miguel, for floors where he's able to remove the turn, or like lower the turn count, very good. Okay, it actually is useful on floor 52, right? So that's definitely something we have to consider. Then, next up, Red Toto, like I said, he buffs the person behind them and makes it so that the enemy are confused if they attack him. And that's actually going to be very good for the upcoming units on this specific category, where Miwa could taunt and have the evade up, right? And then this Miwa also very similar thing. Then Saki is also able to do a 2-turn taunt, which is huge. And then also Panda, Red Panda, very good for the taunting. Same with Yellow Panda. These guys all fall under the same part, which is the yellow taunting part, right? These 5. And then Toto's kind of to accompany them. That's basically it. And he's basically only good if you're stalling on Jujutsu stages. So that's why Junpei is there. Now next up, Blue Maki for the break is pretty decent, so we're putting her there. A lot of the break units are an A. Same with Megumi, same with Yellow Mekamaru. Yellow Mekamaru is on the higher end because when you break, Mekamaru gets big damage increases, like I think 150%. So he is probably the best break unit. But the thing is, blue units need the break units, especially Maki, because there's not a lot of blue taijutsu units. There's only one, but Nanami is only half taijutsu. So she's the full taijutsu unit while giving herself pretty good buffs. It's very nice and allows her to kind of shine, where Megumi is going to be good. Once he gets rolling, once he uses his ult, it's going to be very nice to keep on rolling, but it's not like anything crazy, but it's still decent. And Mekamaru definitely has a pretty good damage increase, all things considered. Now, Saki is very good, more so as a DPS, right? She does very good damage. Could get 1 big damage dealt with her when she gets below 30%, 35, with a 180% damage increase in total. And then here, the lower HP up to a 40% damage increase. And then also, I think she has more damage increase here. Am I wrong? No, but she has a lot of damage reduction, so she's nice for that, where it's like she'll be able to kind of tank herself and then also do decent damage. Not anything crazy, but definitely decent-ish damage. Now, next up, I got Inumaki, because now he could actually keep someone alive 3 times. So it is definitely something pretty valuable. Then this Itadori could do it once, but he does give alt gauge, right? Which is something to definitely consider, where he's just pumping out also the alt gauge, which you could kind of get twice in a way, and it being counted as 15 later on is also very good. Having the chance to stun is definitely not bad, but having this basically, it's pretty cool, where he taunts everyone, gives himself damage reduction, which isn't anything crazy, but then also has the revival status in case he does die, and if he doesn't die, well, GG, because he still has the revival status, which is pretty good. Genuinely, I think he's decent. I don't think he's anything absolutely insane, but I don't think he's a bad unit by any metric, mainly because of the alt gauge increase. It definitely helps him go a bit better. Now, this Inumaki actually is not bad either, right? He's not bad. He's able to do some good stuff. I just don't think it's on the level of the others. Why I didn't put him in niche is because sure, he's taunting, but all he gives himself is the 15% damage reduction, which is like a bit yikes, right? So he's decent-ish, but that's his main thing. There's really not much else if we're being real, but that taunt is not bad. So it's like, I'll put him there, right? If his heal is also pretty good, it's just 15% in some instances might not be enough. Now, next up, we kind of go through them pretty quick. I'm not even going to talk about C, right? I'm not, but we're going to go through this. So his buffs are right. He could do decent damage once his buffs are built up, but it's not anything crazy. He's pure damage. Total is actually able to do okay-ish damage, but his support's still not anything insane. Maki did become a bit better, which put her in B tier. When she's against a lot of enemies, it's great, but it's not like her alone. She can't kill all the AoE enemies anyway. Like, she ain't pumping out 1 million AoE, right? So not on her skill 3 anyway. So it's like, it's decent. It's just not anything absolutely insane. This Jogo, it's basically just because now that we see Sukuna, if Jogo had like 4 stacks of the flame on his ult, he'd probably be a lot crazier. But because he doesn't, it's not that amazing. But his damage is not horrible. If you want to bump him up to A tier, I could understand you, honestly. Like, he's one of those units that, like, I don't really pay much attention to. You know, we'll put him in A tier just to say. But I really, like, this unit I'm really unsure of. He just doesn't feel that good, but he's not that bad either. Panda is just, like, he costs too much, right? He really does. His damage isn't that crazy. He costs too much compared to other pandas. So he's there. Mekamaru could be good for damage AoE on green. So it's like, it's there. Then the rest go into C tier. It's basically units that I believe no one really cares about or are really that good at all. So we just kind of leave them in C tier to take that up. So there we go. This is my tier list. This is my tier list, all right? If you want the criteria, here it is. Pause the video to read it, all right? But this is my criteria. This is my tier list made with the help of others, and I will now implement the final thing I wanted to do. Real quick, we're just gonna place basically all of these. So we're basically making it to show that, like, for especially newer players, I think this is good, so that people know what exactly what unit does. So mix is basically just being able to support and damage very well in both cases. So mix is only for the top 2 tiers. I don't think the bottom 2 or the rest really matter. So here's DPS and then here's support. I also do count support as what's it called, as tanking, but I'm not going to put it for the niche. Niche is all, like, I already talked about it. That you have to watch the video for to get the exact understanding of what they do, because it's not like they're just supporting or something like that, right? Well, I mean, for the most case, all of these are supports in a way or another, but still. So we could say DPS, yeah, these guys, and then support. It's very weird that I'm not putting Saki in support because she's a tank mainly, but it's weird. She's a bit of both. So we could go DPS, yep, and then we could go for support right here, and then it doesn't matter for the rest. So this is basically how it goes. Anyone after, right, is, so on the right is the actual role. So on the right, these 3 are supports, these are DPSs, these are all supports, right? These are all DPSs, these are all DPSs. The units after Degumi and after are all supports. So, like, that's how it would work. So yeah, that's basically the tier list. Let me know your thoughts. I just want to kind of make this kind of easy, especially for newer players to kind of see. But if you don't want to see this with the actual roles, you just have to click back like 30 seconds and you'll see it. I'll see you guys in the next one. Let me know what you disagree with. I would love to hear your thoughts. Thank you again for watching. Bye-bye.